This is Generation Green's Wildflower Project, the podcast that starts conversations to create connections on this journey we're all doing called life. Together, we can grow through what we go through and bloom in spite of it all. So let's be like wildflowers and see where the wind blows us. You're listening to the Wildflower Project, and this is Sherry Sobey. I'm your host, and today I have the amazing Joseph Ranseth here with me. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for joining me. I'm super excited.
So Joseph has a list of credentials behind his name here, or a list of titles, I should say. And like, holy smokes, when I'm researching you, I can believe all these things. First off, though, you're a professional speaker. I think that's definitely one that people would recognize. He's also an author of 2 books, not one. I didn't know that either. A transformationist and a host of Global Influence Summit, host of the TedX and the Exchange, and he also owns Vine Multimedia Marketing. And you're an ordained minister? Okay, that one was a surprise.
Yeah, in a different lifetime, yes.
In a different lifetime.
Correct.
I want to be an ordained minister. I want to marry people.
Apparently you can do that on the internet.
Yeah, that's what my son was just telling me. And it's like, I want to marry people. That would be so fun.
Yeah.
Actually, I want to do that hand fasting thing.
I don't know anything about that, but I'm sure becoming an ordained minister online is the best $199 you'll spend on the internet.
Yeah, I think it's great. So one of the things that obviously I wanted to talk to you about was about starting movements. And I first heard you, and I believe the ideas are like floating around. Someone said that, and they just kind of have to find a host, right? And I think the idea was floating around at TedX and the Exchange when I saw you there, and listening and being so inspired, obviously, by all of these people that were starting movements and how that all starts. You know, you get this great idea. And then I love the video clip actually where the guy was dancing and he looks to try to, beckon people to come and join him. And I think there's the 3 parts to it that you talk about, right? You get a big idea, a clear message, and then find your army and start building it. And so how did that movement stuff all start for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's not like I had a guidance counselor in high school sit me down and say, look, you show a lot of promise in helping people start movements. So I think you should go to this university and take this movement starting degree. That wasn't really on the table back then. But, long story short, I started off in internet marketing way back in the day in the late 90s. And was really fortunate to be in the right place at the right time and learned a lot and had many great opportunities there. And then, but my heart was really pulled, into service. And as you mentioned, being an ordained minister, I did that. But in this dynamic, I had a dichotomy created in my mind, this kind of mental ping pong match between here's what I do for money, but here's what I do for meaning, right? I wanted to, follow my purpose, but then, all this marketing stuff is what I do for profit. And at one point, one of my earliest mentors, I was living down in the U.S. at this point, was Dr. Stephen Covey, who wrote 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he gave me some advice that not only changed, the course of my career, but my entire life. He said, Joseph, if you want to be successful, obviously referring to a much richer version of success than boats and cars and, stock portfolios and so forth. If you want to be successful, you need to learn how to integrate the spiritual with the secular. And it instantly just landed on me that was the struggle that I was facing, having these 2 separate worlds. And he planted the seed in my mind that they could somehow be married together. And it took a while for me to really wrap my head around the significance of that, but it started me on this course, prompted by the belief that the 2 could be married together. I started studying, who I consider to be the master marketers, folks like Gandhi, Dr. King, Jesus. The list goes on and on of these powerful people that understood how people made decisions, which really is kind of the key trait of a really good marketer. Right, is their understanding of human behavior, right? And so marketers will use all of this knowledge to create the colors, the words, the experiences that people need in order to feel the feelings, in order for them to take the action that they want them to take, right? They engineer transactions, generally, which is around buy my widget, right? Whatever I'm selling, I want you to feel this experience so you buy what I'm selling. But these master marketers, as I called them, the movement makers, they took that same understanding of how people operate, and instead of engineering transactions, they used it to engineer transformation, a change in the way that people saw themselves, other people, or the world around them. And, kind of like this Spider-Man moment of realizing, like, with great power comes great responsibility. And the people who started movements had the same power of master marketers, but instead of using it to just get richer, they used it to enrich people's lives and enrich the world. And I became obsessed with this and started studying, in particular, Gandhi and Dr.King, how they did that in others. And then there are some that apply and some that are different, which is a whole, rabbit hole we could go down another time. But looking at them and seeing that there was a blueprint that they followed, that there were, we simplify it to the 3 steps, as you talk about a big idea, clear message, and army of advocates. But it's significantly deeper than that. But seeing that there was a predictable framework that they followed, I started, reverse engineering that and put that blueprint together. And now that's what I teach, both as a speaker, as an event host, and in particular, where most of my energy is spent in my, private coaching program, working with entrepreneurs that are trying to start movements.
Right. So this is something you can do as a business owner even, right? It's all about your mindset and what your intention is with your business, wouldn't you say? Because I think one of the things you said too was, it's one thing to love what you do. It's another to do what you love, I believe, is something that you had mentioned. And that I had to sit with it for a second and think about that. And it makes total sense, because I've always said that I love what I'm doing. And then it was like, yeah, okay, but am I doing what I love? And, I think it is, because, I know it is, because for me, a lot of things happen for reasons, I believe, or, from those really huge moments that happen where you think they're going to be stumbling blocks, or they're going to be obstacles that you're never going to overcome, really do change the way, I suppose, the direction of your life that it goes in, which is exactly what happened to me. So I know this is what I was meant to be doing, and I never feel like I'm working, which is really, I feel like I'm cheating sometimes, right? Because I could spend just 12 hours because it's encompassing so many things that I actually love. And so I am doing what I love, and I'm really fortunate to be able to say that. And I wish that for so many people.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. One of the things in this blueprint of looking at the people who started movements, what I realized is that every outer component has an inner parallel, right? So we can look at this framework of, a big idea, clear message, army of advocates. There's all the strategy around it, but there's something much deeper to it, something much more profound. Because when you look at what Gandhi and Dr. King did, they were not the only ones trying to achieve the same outcome. But the question is, why were they successful?
Yeah.
And it wasn't just the outer strategy. There was something much deeper. And they both were deeply, deeply spiritual men. And a lot of people don't know that, Dr. King really was a student of Gandhi. He went to India and studied the spiritual principles upon which, Gandhi liberated, India from colonial rule. And there were deep, profound spiritual principles. And, when you look at a lot of people that are trying to make a change in the world, there's a lot of outer strategies, and there's a lot of people that will teach you those. But without the parallel inner component to those, there's something missing, right? There's a power, and as you described, a magic that seems to happen when we're in alignment with our true nature. And so often we create these dualities in the world, that it's a this or a that, right? It's one or the other. It's left or right or wrong, good or bad, black or white. And, Lao Tzu said that the words of truth are always in paradox to each other. And when you see this space where paradox now there's a space held for paradox, that two equally valid truths can exist in seeming opposition to each other, now the whole world changes, right? And so where I'm going with this is, to your point, there's a lot of people, gurus, in the pop psychology world that will just say, just follow your bliss, right? Find what you love and do that. And that's really valuable. As you said, like you've achieved this beautiful gift in your life because you're able to do what you love. But the other component is just loving what you do. And that's not just like an arrangement of circumstance. That's like an inner journey of saying, no matter what I'm doing, I'm going to find the love in it and I'm going to be grateful for it. And when you marry those two together, that's where the real magic happens.
Yeah, and I think that one of the other things, because you had to overcome a really difficult time in your life, and when I don't know if I can say that about, having a brain injury that happened, and changing that thinking about, okay, what can I do with this, right? What am I meant to do with this? I think that more often, if we were to stop and see that with the challenges or the obstacles that get in our way, it could really be an amazing experience for us and a really transformational time for us too, leading us to perhaps where we were actually meant to go. So can you talk a little bit about that and how you came to...
I mean, the short version of it is, I was in an accident, suffered a brain injury. I couldn't work for about a year and a half. And for quite a while after that was still significantly, challenged. And, at this point I have no cognitive deficit, but still dealing with some of the aftermath, of that injury. And that was three and a half years ago now. But it was a tremendous gift, for me because, we simplify this blueprint, to these 3 steps, right? But one of the things that precedes all of that is this journey that I like to call arriving through adversity. True movement makers really earn the right, so to speak, to lead their movements because they've gone through this journey of personal adversity. And instead of just like overcoming it, as we often talk about, like they transformed it. Gandhi talked about like transforming anger, transforming adversity, transmuting it into something different. And what I learned through this experience of essentially my life being thrown into chaos because of this injury is that gratitude is only a half measure if it's only for the good things in our life. And we truly arrive at a space of gratitude where we realize that everything is a gift. And sometimes those gifts come in ugly wrapping, but they are gifts nonetheless. And the call for each of us is to find that space of, if this is a gift, what is it? What can I learn from this experience? And I saw that going through this experience, put me on a path of, personal purification, of really looking at, how can I use this to more fully embody, what I am trying to see happen in the world. And it taught me a ton about vulnerability, about truth telling, about asking for help, about collaboration, and really provided me an awful lot more empathy and compassion for the struggles that we all face. And as Mother Teresa said, be kind to everyone, because everyone's fighting some invisible battle.
Absolutely.
that you may not see.
And by sharing and being vulnerable, it, I think, opens it up for other people perhaps to start sharing as well. And knowing everybody's story is important. This year I also became a speaker for United Way. And it was the first year that I shared my personal story. And I was so focused always on being a survivor. I thought if I was to keep looking back at all, I would be a victim to it. But I realized that I just kind of packed it away in this little shame box instead. So this year, and I do this where I set an intention every year, I want to continue to grow regardless of how old I'm getting. I want to always grow, and I always want to expand and be a better person. I also want to give back to the world however I can. And so, being that speaker this year, well, for one thing, I mean, it was so freeing for me. I opened that shame box. I'm not ashamed anymore. And when you bring in that community of people, I couldn't have done that by myself, right? Having an audience, I even said to them, we're going to be best friends really fast here because I'm going to share my deepest, darkest with you. And I am so grateful for all these people because every time I say it, I heal more and more and more. So the more that we be vulnerable like that in life and share our stories or share our struggles or allow ourselves to see the struggle in other people as well, because everybody does have a story. And so often we do want to just minimize it or, say, oh, mine's not as bad as theirs or whatever it might be. Nobody's had a perfect life, right? And I think, that was one of the basis of this podcast and starting it was about to get when we come together as a community and we realize we're all kind of at different areas in our life journey and all overcoming those obstacles. I don't even see them as obstacles either. I see them as growing and learning opportunities because they are all there for reasons that we can then share and hopefully help others progress in their journeys, right? Yep. So I think it's amazing when people can be that vulnerable, and I appreciate it.
Well, when you see that, as human beings, we all have this common desire to be seen and heard and loved and accepted for who we are. And for who we are includes the best parts of us, as well as the worst parts of us, the darkest parts. And when we or when anyone shares vulnerably, it's kind of like opening up the space on the dance floor. It's like we're leading in a dance and we're saying, here's the space. And we open that space for someone else to step in, and any time that we share something vulnerable, we're allowing ourselves to be seen and heard. And yes, we're taking a risk. But as you said, there's something really liberating about that. And when we step forward and do that courageously ourselves, it's a tremendous gift for other people to see, like, oh, I can do that too. Instead of just saying, oh, how are you? Oh, I'm fine, thanks. How are you? Oh, fine, great.
Yeah. It's like even I was speaking with somebody this morning that is always super, super happy. And, you notice right away those people, though, when they have not the energy that they usually do, but if they say fine, well, they're really transparent here because but how many of us do that too, where we just say, oh, I'm okay, I'm fine, right? Instead of saying, I'm having a really crappy day, and we're allowed to have that, and we're allowed to share that, and it doesn't have to be all roses all the time. And I appreciate that so much. It throws you off sometimes when somebody does say, you know what, I'm not good, right?
I think, we talk about movements, and I believe there's this desire in everyone to do something, meaningful in the world. And sometimes we get distracted by the allure of, starting a movement and changing the world. But really, if we want to have an impact, those are the opportunities, to stop and to look someone in the eye and say, how are you?
Yeah.
Right. And to actually wait for an answer.
Yeah. We don't listen enough, actually. I don't think. I've learned this having children now, that we want to, especially when we're nurturers, right? We want to fix. We don't always want to just be there and just listen and hear people. And it's something I've been practicing. And it was one of my sons, I have 3, and it was one of my sons who came and was going on about a really bad moment at school that he had with a teacher. And I said, I listened to him, but then I was like, oh, maybe you should try this. Maybe you should talk with him, and maybe this and that. And he goes, I didn't ask for your advice. And it was really the moment where it's like, oh, right, you didn't. I just needed to vent. I needed to hear you. And it is so true for everybody, right? When you get that out, when you're allowed to have a good vent sesh with those people that support you and are safe to share with, it feels so good. And wouldn't it be so amazing if we could just do that in life for real? And I think that's the whole core of being authentic, being our authentic selves. But we're so governed by, what's right and what's wrong and what's proper and what's not.
Something profound happens when we realize that nobody is broken. Nobody needs to be fixed, that people have their own answers, and we can shift from, trying to manage people or trying to fix them or trying to solve things to just holding space and just honoring the greatness in people and seeing that everyone is on a journey, and that journey is intended for one purpose, which is to help people to discover and express the fullness of their true nature, which is something incredible and brilliant and divine and worthy of being honored.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I love that. What would you say, though, to those people that are the doubters, are the ones that say, oh, this world is just so bad. There's nothing that can change it. No amount of wishful good vibes, any of that stuff. I've run into a few of those people. What would you say to somebody like that?
Well, if they were in front of me, I would probably just look at them with love and give them a hug instead of saying anything. But it's interesting because one of the things that I am well known for. I'll get tens of thousands of visitors to my website a month, looking for this Gandhi quote. Because I speak about Gandhi and movement so much. This quote that most people have probably heard: "Be the change you want to see in the world." And, I wrote a blog post about that quote because Gandhi didn't actually say that. And what he said was actually something much more profound. And, to paraphrase it, basically he said, what we see out there is just a reflection of what's going on in here. Mm-hmm. And if we want to change the world, the way that we do it is by looking within. And so if people are doubting, that good things exist in the world, if people are cynical about the opportunity for things to improve or get better, I don't see that as a problem with the world. I see that as a reflection of their inner state. And that's just a sign that someone is feeling a little bit of perhaps despair in their life, feeling a little bit of overwhelm or discouragement with how things are in their life. And the solution for that is not trying to convince them otherwise, but rather to create a space where they can not only hear, through the ears and with the brain, but rather to feel that all is well. And I think, as you shared, being vulnerable and sharing our challenges and our adversities is such a liberating gift, because it helps people to realize that their burdens that they're carrying do not make them so unique that they are not seen and heard. And I think that's one of the human drives. We all want to be significant, right? We all want to be our own independent being. And sometimes when we find that identity through the struggles that we face, whether we voice them to the outside world or not, that's a recipe for some unhealthy patterns. Mm-hmm. And being able to normalize the human experience, whether it's the mistakes that we make, the shame that we feel, the challenges that we experience, the trauma that we've endured, normalizing all of that and helping people to realize that welcome to being human, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. This is the human experience. Good things and bad things are going to happen. And to let those adversities refine us instead of define us, right? When people feel that all is well within them, they start to see that all is well within the world. Mm-hmm. Again, we hold this space for the paradox, that nothing is wrong, right? Nothing is broken. And at the same time, as much as things are perfect as they are, there's also the opportunity for things to get better. And to me, that is the most beautiful of the paradoxes, is that you're perfect as you are, mm-hmm. And there's plenty of room for growth.
I love that. Yeah. And I think we really have to sit with things like that and really let them resonate so that we really believe them, like really authentically believe those things. Because it's one thing to say them, but it is another just to really let it absorb in and start to have it become something that is just our way of thinking.
It's, if I may indulge a story. And
yeah, please.
I don't want to take us too far over time, no. But what you said reminded me. Years ago, I was on a cruise, and I was with a member of my mastermind team, and it was through the Caribbean, and one of the stops was the Grand Cayman Island. And if you've ever been there,
I got married there.
Oh my gosh! So 7 Mile Beach. This is beautiful beach, and it's really long, as you might gather from the name. And I was walking down this beach, and the person I was walking with, in my mind at least, is a stereotypical Swede, right? She was tall, blonde, bright blue eyes, really bubbly personality. And what was most fascinating is that she was completely taken with the seashells. She had a little plastic bag and was filling, this plastic bag with all the little pieces of coral. And she stopped as she was filling her bag, and she probably had 30 pieces, in her bag. And she stopped at one of them and she said, "Here, Joseph, this one's for you." And she handed me a piece of coral that was not only in the texture, but in the shape of a human brain.
Oh, wow.
And I had to stop, because at the beginning of the cruise, I set an intention, as you described for each year that you do. I set an intention, and that was to think less and to feel more. And here I get this, piece, this little reminder of this human brain. And I thought, one of those moments where you kind of look up in the sky and you're like, oh, looks like life is listening, right?
Yeah.
And as we continued to walk, she's filling her bag more and more. And then she stops again. She picks up another piece and she looks at it and she goes, "Here, Joseph, this is for you." And not knowing anything about this intention that I had set, she handed me a little piece of coral in the shape of a heart.
Oh.
And I just had this sublime moment, these two physical reminders that, I put in my pockets and, kept them there for years and years of, in any moment, what kind of decision making am I doing? Am I using my brain, or am I using my heart? It was this beautiful experience of helping me to balance, the mind and the heart, right? The left brain, the right brain, this whole, this war. But it wasn't until a couple of years ago when I was keynoting the annual convention for this U.S. fitness organization that I realized that the brain and the heart, right? The head and the heart are not dichotomous. It's not one here and one there, but they are actually aligned, that they're on top of each other. And our greatest power is not, in thinking or feeling, but it's finding that alignment between our thoughts and our feelings, between our mind and our heart. And so, as you said, it's one thing to know it in the head, but when we find that alignment between here's what I'm thinking, here's what I'm holding in mind, and here's what I'm feeling, and having a visceral experience of it, we don't have to have the cognitive understanding of the psychological principles or the ontological principles that define our wellness if we have a visceral experience of them. And that's the beautiful gift that we can receive in someone's presence, and it's also the gift that we can give, that when we stop and we look someone in the eye and we tell them that we love them, even if we don't use our words, we just let them know that they're seen and heard as they are, that really is the change that we have the biggest opportunity to have, is to hold that space for someone in love.
You're really good at that, actually. It was one of the first things that I noticed about you. You have this intense way of like really being present and really connecting visually like that, because you hold connection really well. And I've not always been that good at that, but it was one of the first things I noticed about you was just how you are really in the moment here, really connecting, really present, and you feel like you're actually very genuine.
Unless I've got my smartphone in my hand, then I'm all distracted.
Okay, see,
right?
I hadn't seen that though. Okay, and I have a question for you though. What is with the barefoot thing? Because you were on barefoot on stage. Okay, there's a story here, obviously.
Yeah. Okay.
So you like to be barefoot?
Yeah. So without making it a 20-minute address, I've been barefoot for about 3 years.
Okay.
And there are all sorts of reasons why I could have chosen to go barefoot. But the simple answer is, one day I was meditating in the morning and I had the little inner whisper say, "Why don't you go barefoot today?" And I did. And I had this sublime experience of just feeling connected to the world, not only to the earth, but to all the people as I was walking around. It was in San Diego when this happened. And I just said, I'll try it again. And I did another day and another day and another day. And then one day it rained and I thought, oh, well, I'll put the shoes back on. And I wore the shoes and just felt a little bit weird. And I realized that as I got into my office that I was wiping, my shoes off. And I'm like, I could do that barefoot. What's the difference? And so I did it. So yes, there's like a physical aspect to it. My posture and my gait have improved. I felt a lot more calm, more grounded. It's a valuable icebreaker. Obviously, people want to talk about it. I get far less, flack going into businesses than people would think. In the first year of doing it, only 3 times did anyone in a restaurant ever say anything about the fact that I was barefoot. I've only been kicked off of one airplane. But the other thing, it was very interesting because it was a catalyst for a very profound moment when it was within the first year of doing it. I was in a meeting, which was for this leadership organization that had to do with business owners and legislation and so forth. Basically, it was a room full of old rich white guys.
Okay.
And somehow I was invited to participate in this, and it was a 2-hour meeting, and we were talking about a lot of important things, and I was contributing, and I could see I was getting dismissed because here's this guy in a jeans and a black t-shirt, and no shirt, no shoes. And I remember this one point about half an hour in, I said something that must have been particularly, relevant or insightful. And I remember specifically the look on this one man's face as he looked over and he's like, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. And all of a sudden I was included in the discussion. And it just hit me that this is being barefoot, right? I mean, if I would have worn a suit and tie and dress shoes, I probably would have been included at the table right from the beginning. And so this was entirely within my control, but I instantly had this understanding and this insight and compassion of, what is it like to be, perhaps a woman at the boardroom, or to be a person of color at the boardroom, or to be, transsexual or gay in the boardroom, in places, that are typically dominated by, old rich white guys, right? Mm-hmm. And, not to make this a big, privilege, discussion or whatever, but I had this experience of, oh, this is how hard some people work to earn their seat at the table.
Yeah.
And I had to prove, through my intelligence that I earned a spot. And it was really neat to see the moment where the guy saw me for what I was. But as you said, like when we stop and we really connect with people, we connect at a level much deeper than what we see on the skin or, in someone's orientation or their background or whatever. And I think if we can cultivate more of that, we can have a lot more meaningful conversations and all be enriched in the process without having to do all the facade of let me prove how good I am just because I'm different.
Yeah. No, and I think so many of us wear, like this outer kind of protection, armor, whatever it is, even I guess you could call them masks, right? Because we deal a lot with imposter syndrome, and I've had to deal with that one myself many times, right? Like, who do I think I am? Even starting a podcast, right? And I have to go back to, I just genuinely care about people. I genuinely want to connect and talk to people. I'm not being an imposter. I'm not trying to be anybody else. I'm just trying to be me. And I love that though. And I think, when you do connect, you don't see anything. You don't see disabilities. You don't see color. You just connect. It's a heart to heart connection, right? Mm-hmm. And so I knew about being barefoot as far as that connecting to the earth, and it's called earthing actually, right? And a lot of people will do that. Which is what
I found out after I had been doing it for months.
Yeah. So look at that. It's just an innocent discovery here, and that you could validate, right? Like, it works for me because it's even been known, like, for people that have anxiety, just go outside and walk barefoot in the grass, and that connect. We don't do enough. We have so many barriers between us and the energies that the earth is giving, and we're missing out on so much. And I think if we were, it would probably raise that vibration, right? Raise the vibration within us and around us.
You know, it's so interesting that you bring up imposter syndrome, because I almost shared this story when you asked about my brain injury. I had this moment, and I'll keep it really brief, that this was probably 5 or 6 months into my accident. So it was in the, a very, very challenging time. And I was speaking at an event in California, in Hollywood actually, where I was receiving an award, this thought leadership award, and the room was full of all these, big important people. And it should have been the highlight of my career as a speaker, because I was sharing the stage with, some huge names, and I got this award. And people were coming up to me afterward and be like, "Wow, that was amazing. You must feel, on top of the world," and all this stuff. And the reality was I felt like garbage, because here I was, my ability to speak wasn't hindered by my injury, but behind the scenes, for the last 5 months, I had been trying to keep my team of 6 employees afloat, being the sole breadwinner of my family, all the time, not being able to work and hemorrhaging money, and just feeling like a total failure. And I had this conversation with a woman about a week after that, when this was the first phone conversation that I had taken since my accident. And it was a meeting that had been set up months and months beforehand, because this person, had, they were a well-known person and had a very busy schedule, right? Mm-hmm. And we got on the phone, and she said, "Joseph, I've heard so many great things about you. How are you doing?" And, authenticity and vulnerability are a buzzword. So I decided to say, well, really crappy, and here's why. And I just said, received this award, but, I just feel like a total failure. I'm completely broke. I'm all this stuff. And I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to make it. And I feel like a total fraud. And it was crickets. Just like, no, nothing. And then finally she said, "Joseph, thank you for sharing." Because recently I was actually just nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. And since that has happened, the close, friends and family that I've told have put me on such a pedestal, and I feel like such an imposter, that I've actually adopted some self-harming behaviors. And I haven't had the space to tell anyone about it until right now.
Wow.
That you opened up. And I had another one of these moments, because I was looking at my phone while this happened, and I saw that the day that this happened was Gandhi's birthday.
Huh.
And my whole life's work revolves around studying, in particular, 2 people that started movements and both won the Nobel Peace Prize.
Oh my gosh.
And here on the birthday of the one, who's kind of the figurehead of this all, I am steeped in self-pity and discouragement for this bad thing that's happening in my life, only to find out that becomes a liberating gift to someone who also was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. And it was in that moment that obviously I looked up to the sky again. I was like, "Life, are you listening?"
Yeah.
But that was when I realized that gratitude is only half measure if it's only for the good things in our life.
Yeah.
And that as much as I saw that thing, that accident, that adversity being the barrier to me doing my life's work, I just felt like, why is this thing in the way of me doing this noble service that I want to do? That I realized that was the way I was going to achieve what I wanted to do. And just this peaceful moment of surrender, of realizing that if this is how I'm going to touch lives, then so be it. I'll go through a million brain injuries. I'll be broke the rest of my life. I'll embrace whatever it is that needs to happen in order for me to be that I guess, instrument in touching lives.
Yeah. And I think that's totally the word, the instrument, because we don't realize sometimes something that is happening to us or words that we've even said, how they affect somebody else, and like what you said, opening that space up and allowing somebody, to show their true selves. So that is like so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you for holding the space. I think you're completely right that we have these magical moments where we realize that we're not doing so much as we are just kind of riding the wave
yes.
of something much bigger.
Yeah.
And that magic happens, and we have no choice but just to be grateful for it.
Are there any plans to have like a TedX again here, or?
We do actually.
Perfect.
We have one coming up this fall.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. Oh, it's so is it going to be in the Exchange again?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, it is. Wonderful. Okay, well, I'll be there for that for sure. And then you also host the Global Influence Summit, and this is a place where thought leaders and people that want to make that change. Is it just for like professionals, or is this something anybody can go to?
So we're going into our fourth year, and the Global Influence Summit has typically been an annual gathering for thought leaders. So authors, speakers, coaches, purpose-driven entrepreneurs, change makers that are trying to elevate human consciousness in one way or another. So they all have books or platforms or whatever, and the event is designed to help teach people the framework and the blueprint of how do you start a movement, but specifically how do you increase your reach and how do you increase your impact, and those are two very different things, as we've kind of touched on a little bit here. So it's open. Anyone can come. It will be of most interest to people that really are trying to take their hard-earned life lessons, or perhaps discover what those hard-earned life lessons are, and use them as gifts of service to others in a way that obviously they can build a business around it. And to do it in a not only impactful but a profitable way, and that's in San Diego, which is my heart is in Winnipeg, but my body
wishes it was in San Diego.
Yes, yeah.
I think that's absolutely amazing. I can only imagine the amount of energy, positive energy, and again raising that vibration. Right, like that would be just insane to be a part of.
It is a beautiful and brilliant experience. And, so the work that I do, working with thought leaders and helping them, implement this blueprint of how to start movements, is really gratifying work. And the one thing that, I've felt a little bit of loss around is that I don't, my work is not here in Winnipeg. I work with people, and I've been running my business out of San Diego for years. And I've never had a local client. And so I felt like this little bit of disconnection from this city that I love so much. And I should put an asterisk on, I've never had a local client. And that was a big part of why I wanted to do the TEDx event here, to be a little bit more integrated into the community, to feel more connected. But if anyone local here in Winnipeg, wants to come to the event, which is in the end of March, just reach out to me and say, I heard about this through Sherry. And I'll give a Winnipeg discount to anyone who
Winnipeg discount. I love that.
Who wants to come, or a Generation Green discount.
Yeah. See, but you say your work's not here, but you never know who you're touching just by even like sharing this, right? I mean, it's maybe your work in a different way, I suppose. Well, I'm seriously looking forward to TEDx again in the Exchange, since that's here, and I'm going to totally it's on my radar now, definitely, and I encourage anybody to go to that one. If you watch TED Talks, how that moves you, and this is something that's right here. There was so many amazing people that took that stage, so kudos to you for bringing that. And I'm so excited.
It was a lot of fun to be involved in the community, and to use some of the work that I do professionally to be able to bring in some of these really, really incredible speakers. And it was just, what a beautiful, beautiful thing to witness.
Yeah. And like I said, I believe that's where the idea was floating around and, took a host in me, and where this wildflower project came from. And I don't think anybody could walk away and not leave with that feeling of, what could I do? What can I do? What am I meant to do? I believe it's an idea floating place and opportunity.
Beautiful. Well, kudos to you for grabbing the idea and, expressing it into physical reality here.
Yeah. Well, I really hope that, people really do understand that about how important it is as a community. And we're doing life together. And so we can be a community just for that reason and help each other along with this journey.
Yeah. We're all in it together. We might as well make it enjoyable.
Yeah. And we'll end at that. Thanks so much, Joseph.
Thank you.
Okay. So until next time, keep growing, keep blooming, and be happy.